I once babysit for this family that lived in Charleston. Really nice folks. Kind of family you could trust. I asked the dad to drive me home from a school hockey day as my dad was too drunk and my mum was too absorbed, and the guy asked no questions. The dad of that family drove out to get me and we had a small conversation about how school was going, how I did in the homecoming game, and if I was alright with going back home. I was embarrassed about the whole ordeal, so I turned down his offer to stay with him for a while. But the point is that family was nice. If I was ever stuck in a rut, they'd be the first ones I'd consider reaching out to. My dad got fired from his job, most likely because he refused to shower and showed up drunk to work on 5 occasions, so I needed to pull up my big boy jeans and find some money. The family down in Charleston, the sweet people, they heard of my situation, and as we were longtime friends, the dad called me up and offered me a job. What job? I asked. He was hesitant on the phone for quite some time, but finally responded in a low whisper. He said that I could swing by the house every Friday and watch over their daughter. He said I could swing by and then him and his wife would leave the house for the night, and I'd watch over the daughter until they arrived. He said the pay would be modest and that was all there was to it. I didn't know they had a daughter. The Friday I showed up, the sky was cloudy with a green overcast, but it never rained. The sweat on my forehead was sticky, and I combed my hair back as I walked up the steps to that home in Charleston. I rang the doorbell a number of times, but no one appeared to be home. The lights were all out too. A bit frustrated, I turned around, determined to walk back home in the summer heat. Then I heard latches on the door move. I stopped dead in my trails, stunned like a criminal hearing the sound of approaching sirens. The door swung open and there was the dad and the mum. None of the lights were on. The mum and dad stood staring at me, and the lights were off behind them. This was startling, so I imagined their daughter would be running up to greet me or something like that. The dad moved his mouth like he was unsure of something. "We won't be long. Here's your pay." I grasped the bills in my nervous left hand. "Where's your daughter?" The dad looked impatiently behind him, looking at the dark living room behind him, and he spoke in a stammering voice. "She usually sleeps for most of the day." As the father was explaining how the daughter never comes out of her room, I saw that the mother never took her gaze off the floor. She just sort of stood there motionless. Suddenly the dad's voice grew persistent. I said, "Is there anything more you need from us?" "No," I choked. He offered me a familiar, friendly smile. As the couple shambled off to their night out, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Closing the door, I turned to the dark living room. It was dark because the child hated any source of light. I was instructed to never turn the lights on, no matter the circumstance. At that time, I guess I didn't consider how crazy that was. The father's words echoed in my mind. "She doesn't leave her room very often. Just make sure she doesn't throw a fit and everything will be fine. We shall return shortly." I didn't even know where the child's room was. I didn't even know how old she was. I slowly wandered across the living room. This was my first time babysitting, so I was unaware of the proper etiquette for being in someone else's home. I thought it'd be alright if I just sat down and did some schoolwork. Shuffling over to the living room couch, I unhooked my backpack and pulled out a notebook and a trusty pencil case. The sofa sank in deeply as I sat down cautiously. The room was dark and quiet, my eyes tracing along the outlines of the bookshelves, tables, chairs, and TV stand, and hanging portraits. An outline of an expensive vase crept into view from my left, and I made a mental note for myself to not knock it over. Opening my homework folder after my lazy glance around the room, I started my algebra. I hated algebra, and I especially hate when the lighting is so poor you have to squint to read everything you hate. Eventually I scoffed and slammed the algebra textbook shut. In frustration, I decided to get up and look for the daughter. I just wanted to see what room it was, so that if she awoke I'd be prepared to attend to her. There was a hallway that connected the kitchen and the living room. It was this hallway that caught my eye in a search for the girl. The narrow space had 2 doors on either side. One of the doors was just plain wood, with a greasy door handle. The other door was shockingly vibrant. Standing there in intense fascination, my eyes followed an outline of glitter around this door. The door also had a pink poster paper. This pink paper was lazily scotch-taped on, and some of it was crumpled and drooping. Scrawled across the paper were the words "daughter." That word "daughter" was written maybe 1,000 times in black Sharpie, something like you'd see in a prison cell where the inmate writes disturbing things over and over again. After watching that door for quite some time, as if that door would rip off its hinges and chase me through the house, I started gathering my thoughts. I started reasoning. She was just a girl with a weird choice of art style. All kids are like this. I was once like this, with my once vivid imagination. Why did I find it odd for a girl, maybe 6 or 7, to write the word daughter over and over again with what seemed to be maniacal handwriting? There's no reason for me to be stopped by this sight, yet once I saw that pink paper in the dark hallway, I was afraid of that door. I was afraid of the thing that waited behind it, the thing that slept and was waiting for me. Feeling assured as I knew where the daughter was, I slowly made my way back to the living room, back to that couch with my homework, and I made sure to be as quiet as possible. The last thing I wanted was to wake up the girl and send her into a fit. The couch welcomed me and my body seemed to sink in its bottomless pit. I sank so peacefully into that couch. The room was dark and I just felt so incredibly tired. Then I forced a loud yawn in my attempt to stay awake. This led me to stretch my arms, and as I was doing so, I heard the most disturbing noise. Sweat flooded my pits as I heard the expensive vase crash to the floor. The sonic blast from that sound in that quiet household knocked me back, and I was surprised the whole place didn't come crashing down from how loud it was. With a throbbing heart and dry mouth, I gained a heightened sense of surrounding from adrenaline. I waited for another sound. I waited for the sound of that child. I walked over to the pink door in the dark hallway, perplexed that my commotion did not wake the girl. I turned the knob, ripping some of the poster paper as I did this. My head told me no. Don't go through with it, you mental case. But my arm pushed the door forward. I'd already broken the vase, why not break another rule while I'm at it? Besides, she was my responsibility. I had to make sure she wasn't choking on a marble or plate or whatever it was these kids shoved down their throats. The door creaked on its hinges, like scraping chalk against a grimy blackboard. I carefully released my grasp and peered inside. The room was dark. And this room was darker than the rest of the house. My hands began to shake as I thought of some monster crouching in the darkness. I imagined a small child with fangs and claws crouched on the floor in front of me. As I squinted with quivering eyes, I found the outline of a light switch. Might as well break another rule. I pressed my finger underneath the plastic cover of the switch. I slowly inched my hand upward, the heart rate rapidly expanding, threatening to explode in my chest as I did so. Boom. The lights were on. I blinked hard like a drunk stumbling out of a bar. I blinked again, and finally the haze lifted from my vision. It was just an ordinary children's room. A girl's room. There was a bed with pictures of princesses scattered across a pink blanket. There were dolls in doll houses. Pink and purple children's books were lined up on the bookshelves, some even laid open on the carpet. There was a closet and a dresser. The walls were covered in pink poster paper, just like the door. Every inch of paper was covered with one single word. Daughter. The monster I imagined at my feet were not real. They were only dolls on a carpet. I was relieved by this. Seeing those dolls with custom-designed outfits reminded me of the days when I was collecting action figures and I became relaxed. Then I realized the daughter was not there. Where was the daughter? In a fit of confused panic, I threw off the covers. No daughter. I fell to the floor and peered under the bed. No daughter. I jumped back up and searched the ceiling and the floor. No daughter. Heavily panting, with the threat of passing out from fear, my eyes fell on the closet. Aha! She must be sleeping in the closet. Or perhaps she was afraid of me and hid herself there. Whatever the case, I had to check on her and make sure she was okay. She was my responsibility after all. So I crept over to the closet door. The room was only a few meters wide, but it felt like miles crossing over that closet door. Something was amiss. My head was screaming at me to leave, to run and never look back, but I just crept forward. I watched my hand creep over towards the door handle. I watched my shaking hand clumsily turn the knob. I opened the door. There was no person. There was a photo of a person, however. A photo of someone that looked familiar, scotch taped to the pink poster paper. A photo that reminded me so much of someone. Beneath the photo was a small pink dress. The dress was also taped to the wall. Another creepy art project of a 7-year-old girl, I reminded myself. There were small boots on the floor beneath the dress. I still had to find the daughter, I remembered. I turned to go look for her, but I stopped dead in my tracks. That photo was so familiar. In a state of incredulous terror, I swirled on my heels to stare at that picture again. My face was on that wall. There was a pink dress, children's boots, and my photo taped to the wall above it. That's when I heard a knock on the door behind me. The goosebumps sprouted all over me like disgusting breakout of hives. My eyes twitched and my muscles froze. "I see you found your room." The dad's voice spoke from behind me. "Well, do you like it? I made sure it was all ready for you. You're gonna be a great daughter. And I'm gonna be a great dad." I slowly shut the closet door with trembling hands. "You see, you may think you're a boy now, but soon you will learn to act as a daughter." Once more I turned to look at the doorway, my body twitching all over in panic. "Yes, soon you'll play dress up or play tea party. You used to love tea party. That is, before the accident." My eyes met the cold eyes of the father. Those eyes were steady and soulless. The father opened his mouth to speak more, but then closed it abruptly. A man with a hideous frown and soulless eyes stood motionless by the doorway. A broken man, in need of a daughter. Blink once, blink once more, and you realize this is real. This is actually happening. The man in the doorway clutched a long, pointy syringe in his left hand. The syringe moved back and forward, but the man's eyes remained fixed on me. Then his lips moved. "First, my sweetie, you must sleep. You always used to sleep here, in your room." It took me a long amount of time to realize that the father was moving towards me, rushing at me with the poison syringe, because my head was still processing this information. This crazy person, a man I trust, invited me into his home so he could turn me into his daughter. The psycho wanted me as a pet. The adrenaline rushed over my frozen muscles. Every motion from that point on was involuntary as my mind let my body take the wheel. I watched as I dodged the needle and drove my fist into the father's chest. I saw my legs sprint for the door. Pink poster paper floated through the air. I saw the wife, a kitchen knife in her hand, her head bowed down, unmoving, and I sprinted past her. I heard the loud shrieks of the father. He was yelling for his girl, his daughter. He kept screaming about how he would never let his daughter go again. I ran past the smashed vase. I ran past my homework folder with the algebra sheet on top. Then I broke through the front door and caught myself from falling down the porch steps. My asthma was getting worse, but the adrenaline refused to quit. Again, I watched as I took off down the streets on a dark summer evening beneath an overcast sky. 3 blocks down from the house, I fell into the pavement. My windpipe was closing as my hands gasped at the air for oxygen. Then I grasped the kitchen knife that was protruding from my lower intestine. Blood was flowing down from my gut and crawling along the sidewalk. The blood flowed like the running water from a sprinkler that inches its way down the driveway. Blood should never flow like that. My eyes rolled into the back of my head. I could hear the father calling out for his daughter in harsh screams that echoed from various places down the streets. The hospital was bland. The bed had white sheets, the walls were white, the tiles and the ceiling were white. Everything had a similar theme to it, a pattern, much like that disturbing room I escaped from. Lying in that hospital bed, looking all around the room, I imagined the pink wallpaper and I shuddered. I imagined the words scrawled across the poster paper, the same word written 1,000 times in black Sharpie. I imagined a monster that waited for me at the edge of my bed, a monster that resembled a little girl, but she had fangs and claws, and she was crouching on the floor waiting for me. The doctors all assured me there was no such thing crouching at the foot of my bed, but I knew not to trust them, because no one is who they truly say they are in this world. I learned that lesson from the family in Charleston. One moment someone may seem trustworthy, and the next moment you're in the back of a van all tied up and dressed in a fucking princess outfit. Well, not me. Not me. I don't know if that man is still out there looking for more daughters. I don't know if he may be looking for someone like you, but I do know that I will never babysit again, because it is not the sitter that should be feared, but the monstrous child that waits for him.